Hey, guess what, Pat?
What, Carl?
Guess what, Dwayne?
What's that, Carl?
Chicken butt. It's another episode of Security This Week. Because you know what? Another week happened. That's
Another
amazing.
week did happen. It's crazy. They just keep happening.
I was betting against this one.
Every Thursday when we record this, another week has happened.
They go
really
way faster the older you get.
You know what? We may have nothing to talk about this week. Nothing happened in security. It's really weird.
Oh, yeah.
No, actually, more happened this week than we've ever seen.
The bad part is there's lots of things that happen we don't know about.
Right.
Tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg.
The first story that we have on our list is about the mouse that can, when you plug it in,
Stuart Little?
completely take over your Windows 10 machine. I actually talked about this as a Better Know framework on .NET Rocks, which is coming out at a later time.
Cool.
So we get to break the story here. So you plug in a mouse and you can become a Windows 10 administrator.
Yeah, it's a fascinating exploit. There's a lot of fear, sort of fear mongering going on.
Yeah,
about.
let me ask this: is this one of those things where, well, if I was in your bedroom while you're sleeping, I could kill you? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, I understand.
You could, kind of, because fundamentally, the way these things work, you plug in a device, there has to be a driver that runs that device, right? There has to be something that Windows
it's the HID driver.
Yeah, there's
human
something.
Interface driver.
Right. Yes, thank you.
Don't throw out acronyms.
Appreciate it.
Damn it, Patrick.
I defined it afterwards. I beat Carl to it.
You did.
Extra points.
I'm training you well. So this is, the brand is Razer, R-A-Z-E-R, right? And they make gaming hardware.
I love their mice.
And components.
Oh, yeah, their mice are awesome.
Everything they make has blinky lights on it.
Yes. Yeah.
And changing color.
And changing color.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's interesting is they're so ubiquitous in the environment of Windows that, when you plug a Razer mouse in, the software that comes with the mouse to allow you to do all sorts of cool stuff, right? You could change the way the buttons work so that you push a button and it changes the DPI on the mouse or changes, LED colors and all that good stuff. So as soon as you plug this mouse in, it pulls down from the Microsoft verse, this synaptic software, and installs it.
Yeah.
And the interesting part of this software is, of course, you're installing a driver. So you could be a normal user just plugging in a mouse. And when you install a driver, it has to install as a local administrator / system account.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
So there's an axiom that I want to display here, which is that in the vast majority of cases, convenience is the enemy of security.
Right.
Most of the time, if it's easier, it's less secure. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just because that's the easy route to implement the feature.
Right. Yeah. Automatically push down this software. Nobody needs to go find it. You don't need to know your administrative account to install it.
Super convenient.
Yep.
Super convenient. The problem is, when this software is installing, it gives you the ability to decide where you want to install it. Does that sound dangerous?
Yeah, that's where things go wrong, because that means you have to have access to the hard drive.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? So the interesting thing, Microsoft has done a fantastic job of making lots of common dialogues, making all of our programs look the same, right? So when I click File Open in Word, or I click File Open in Notepad, or I click File Open in anything, I get this common dialogue. And it's this dialogue that allows me to do all sorts of things. I can open files, I can go and rename things, I can create directories. Mm-hmm. But there are things you can do in there that you don't know maybe you can do, like go find an executable, right-click on it, and you can run it from that dialogue.
Yep.
And one of the things you can also do is, when you select, I want to change the directory, it allows you to open a PowerShell script. And for those who don't know what PowerShell is, it's what you think. I mean, it's powerful admin for your computer. And not only that, but any other computer you have access to. So it's like a command window on steroids.
It's like a powerful shell or PowerShell.
Yeah, that's right.
Best marketing term ever.
So the fact that you can open a PowerShell thing at all without an auth check, I say is is a bug in Windows.
So famously, I don't know if this is apocryphal or true, but supposedly Jim Allchin said that if he could go back and do Windows again, he would remove all the user configurable options.
Yeah.
And so I have to ask, why wouldn't every piece of software in the world now install to a directory with a unique name or a GUID under app data? There's no reason to install anywhere else.
Right. I mean, the whole idea was Windows was designed to conserve memory and to conserve disk space. So the more things that are shared, the better.
Right.
And of course, that
includes credentials.
Yeah. Space isn't a problem now. So we don't have to have a Windows System 32 directory with all these DLLs. Just ship it with the software.
Well, and I'd like to come back to what Carl had said. So the interesting sort of the crux of this problem is, Microsoft doing a really good job of condensing and having applications all have the same look and feel and the same common dialogues with a lot of functionality in there.
Yeah.
We need to have double checks there on how privileged that dialogue is and who's calling it. So in this particular case, an administrative process, a local administrator, local system is installing the driver. It presents the UI to the normal user who doesn't have privileges,
right,
and asks the normal user if they want to change the install directory. When the user says, yeah, I do, it opens up the Windows common dialog, which we've already explained is very powerful. You can launch a PowerShell script. You could open up a command prompt. There's all sorts of things you can do in there. And it launches it as a local system administrator who has full privileges on that box.
What it should really do is say, talk to your administrator.
Exactly. Yeah, it should say, hey, if you want to change this location, I get it, because maybe you don't have a lot of C drive space or whatever, but unfortunately, this requires administrative privileges. So prove you're an administrator. I'll allow you to do it. I'll open the common dialog. And I think that's where this breaks down.
I agree.
Now, I'd like to also point out this is not a Razer problem.
Right.
We here love Razer. They put out fantastic projects.
I'm using one now.
Yes. So it's not a Razer problem. It really is any device that you can plug in that requires a driver that has a pre-pulled down piece of software to configure it.
Yeah.
A lot of times those are running privileged.
Yeah.
Printers, everything.
Yeah.
Oh, don't talk about printers. Good Lord, man.
Still getting over that.
You still having print nightmares?
Yeah.
Oh, well played, sir.
Well played.
Yes.
All right. Well, if I could pick a theme for all of the hacks here, well, maybe there's a theme that runs through the next two, which is the, people paying you to participate in their hack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You offer money to people and they do all sorts of crazy
Isn't
things.
that crazy? What's wrong with people?
I've heard of security surveys in the past where they'll offer you a candy bar or a Klondike bar or whatever, and you give them your password, and they seem relatively successful.
So this next one falls in line to the pyramid of threats that Pat was talking about. Wanted disgruntled employees to deploy ransomware.
Yeah, I told you so. So, I mean, people are a powerful weakness, and they're always going to be the chief weakness. So I could argue that the administrator that decides to not install the patches for another day is contributing to the hack that happens the following day. That, the person who buys the mouse that, comes from an irreputable vendor and infects the network because the drivers are manipulated but a lot of times it's just they're insider threats.
Yeah.
And insider threats are really bad because they typically cost 10 times as much as outside threats because I shouldn't use hand grenade references, but I will. But if a hand grenade goes off near you, it's bad. But if it goes off in you, it's really bad.
Oh, okay.
So think of your insider threats the same way. They're already past the defenses. The military's done a really good job of implementing zero trust, which mitigates that extensively. But it's really expensive. It's really hard. And there's really almost all conveniences of access are eliminated by a zero trust implementation.
So let me just read the first couple paragraphs here. Criminal hackers will try almost anything to get inside a profitable enterprise and secure $1 million payday from a ransomware infection. Apparently now that includes emailing employees directly and asking them to unleash the malware inside their employer's network in exchange for a percentage of any ransom amount paid by the victim company. Wow. That's just... and the fact that people participate in this crime is just blowing my mind.
Right. It would be interesting if it were even a fiduciary of the company who did it, and they know they have cyber insurance. I'm not saying that's happening.
Oh man, you have an evil mind.
I guess you kind of have to do what you guys do.
You should write M. Night Shyamalan
for cyber
movies. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is an interesting vector now. The whole, okay, I don't need to bypass your antivirus if I can go in and just ask you to run it. But you know what? Honestly, this points to, we all know, even in a lot of the recent pen tests and red team engagements we've done, we have a lot of customers saying, hey, listen, let's not super focus on social engineering and phishing, which seems weird, right? Because Patrick just said, humans are the weakest link in the system. So why would we not test it?
Right.
And the reason being is everybody's moving over into a just assume breach with users. Let's just assume that our users will click on anything that's sent in.
Or they just don't want to fight the political football of admitting that their users are a threat.
Well, there is that too. We've definitely run into that. But I think, there's definitely this movement to let's not trust the users. Let's assume that whatever they're going to click on the shadiest things you can find on the internet.
Not maliciously.
And we need no.
Well, in this case, though,
it would be maliciously.
It would be malicious, and these employees are not to be trusted because they will They could collaborate with criminals to pull off a heist. Is really what it's all about. It's like going into the bank, right? And the bank robber walks up to the teller and just calmly says, I'm going to rob you of $20,000. And if you cooperate, I'll give you 5,000 of it.
Yeah.
Right. Just meet me out back afterwards. Right.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I guess how do you protect against that except to do, loyalty tests with your employees from time to time? How do you do that?
I mean, that's a great idea. I mean, Patrick can definitely talk about loyalty tests and how those would run.
Can I talk about it, though?
Well, all right.
So we've helped organizations grapple with this in creative and innovative ways, but they're not really for general consumption. Basically, every organization has to come up with a way to figure out whether it's background checks, whether it's training exercises, whether it's setting examples. So,
but there's also shift the other way. Assume your users are malicious. Assume your users are going to run whatever janky thing they find. They're going to pick up every USB they find in a parking lot.
Now you're looking at zero trust.
Right. But even before you get to the whole zero trust, like having appropriate EDRs or endpoint detection as to, tracking what's going on and whether malicious code is running and that sort of stuff. I've touted this many times, have, Microsoft Defender up and running and Microsoft fully patched and assume your users are going to do something just off the wall goofy. And then you're ready for it, right? So if this type of attack happens, somebody's going to click on it and run it.
Well, unless one of your employees is posing as an aerobic instructor, and as we talked about in episode 2, if they came into your company and got hired as a way to gain your trust, so that they could participate in some hack down the road. What are you going to do? I mean,
that's nation state level stuff.
That's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you need to be concerned about where these people are. Like, take, for example, this disgruntled employee. What if they're a network administrator? Or what if they work for the, CSIRT team, the computer incident response security
we've
team?
already this has always been a problem. Remember that incident that you talked about with the Microsoft guy who was hired as a contractor to find bugs in Xbox, and he found one and he exploited it instead of reporting it. Wow.
Right.
For millions of dollars.
Wow.
So it's always been a problem. It's just now it's making the news because it's more overt. The problem has been So for example, one of the problems is let's take a look at espionage at the government level. It's always been a problem for governments that someone could be turned as a spy. And it's happened. Aldrich Ames, there's all sorts of examples in the US and other countries where people have become spies, either for ideological reasons or just for money.
Yeah.
The reason that's hard to do is you have to make contact and hope the person doesn't report it. And so, one of the ways that you could mitigate that is background checks and understanding what people are, what people's position towards the company is, and actually just having a culture where where employees are happy is actually a really great way to do this, but it's also a really hard way to do it. But it probably pays a lot more benefits other than just security.
That's a good point, Patrick. Hey, you know what the answer to this one is, Carl?
What?
Don't have disgruntled employees.
That's
I
right.
think that's a really good idea.
Right there.
I mean, if you could just not have disgruntled employees, only
gruntled.
Heavy doses of gruntleness.
Here's another story that's sort of the same story, but it's a different instance. Ransomware attacker offers employees a cut if they install demonware on their organization systems. Demonware, never heard that one before. But this was researchers masqueraded as a rogue employee to engage with a ransomware operator soliciting insiders to plant ransomware on their own organization servers in exchange for a portion of the ransom money. Their ploy gave them a front row seat in a rare ransomware threat, one that comes with a bold social engineering twist. So it's the same thing, really.
Well, that's honeypotting. They're basically, honeypotted the thing. And, I mean, if you got hit with that and the FBI got involved, they're going to basically look at everybody's finances to see who got paid $5,000 or whose lifestyle changed.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways to catch it. The myth here is that it's easy to get away with financial crimes if they're looking at you. If they're looking at you, they're going to catch you unless you don't ever spend the money.
There's a linked story on this page here about the demonware, about Tesla, something that happened with Tesla last year. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
It says that cyber criminals tried to bribe an employee at the car maker's Gigafactory in Nevada to the tune of $1 million to help infect the company's network with ransomware. And the employee instead worked with the FBI to help get the cyber criminal.
And I thought that they had connections to China. Am I wrong? Or was it Russia?
A Russian national.
Yeah. Flip a coin. It's one of those two usually.
He or she, that employee was, I guaranteed, was a happy employee. Was not disgruntled.
Was gruntled. Yeah.
Was anti-disgruntled. What is the opposite of disgruntled?
Happy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for
it's
that.
Not gruntled. Good. There is no such word.
Gruntled is funny, though.
It is funny. And it just may become a word because people use it. It should be. Are you gruntled? Yeah.
That's kind of a personal question.
Well, yeah. I mean, would the opposite of gruntled then be ungruntled or non-gruntled?
Well, I think we already have that word.
I guess if you look at dismiss, you're not really missing.
No, yeah.
Right, anyway. Probably not.
Go listen to Away with Words if you care, if you want the vocabulary lesson.
Yeah. The etymology of words is not for here.
It's funny how the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
So do you hear about the IoT platform, the IoT protocol, Calais?
That's Internet of Things, which generally describes devices that are little computers, but they don't have keyboards and mice. They just slip into some bigger system to do some sort of monitoring or something.
Well, so like cameras and thermostats and anything that needs an internet connection, but doesn't have a screen, typically a standard screen. Cameras, DVRs, any other devices. So they have, most of them are built on cloud protocols. Microsoft has libraries that you can use to build them. Calais, K-A-L-A-Y, is a cloud platform for IoT devices, and they have figured out some vulnerabilities, a critical vulnerability that allows for you to basically take over their devices. So that's the scenario where we watch the movie and the hacker's like, I'm into their camera system. It's that kind of hack where it's like, it's you take over these devices. Those devices are very dangerous because they're not very transparent on how they work. Some of them have default passwords. Even if they're not the user-facing passwords, they're maybe backdoor passwords that the administrators can use to get in that you'd never find. But if we took one of those devices and reverse engineered, we'd be able to find that password typically. So they're really not that secret. They're not that clever. We've done a lot of the reversing on different devices, and we'll find something stupid where a device will put their public-private key for VPN connections on the router, on the firmware. So it takes somebody fairly technical to go and connect to it and do the reversing. Dwayne does it for fun.
I was going to say, I just literally did one yesterday. Wow. I won't mention the router brand, but pulled down their firmware from August 16th, so 10 days ago. And there are public-private key pairs for SSH on that box. There's also an exploit for Samba, so if you plug in a USB stick. Is that the one I know about? It is not. It's a new one.
All right. I hear eyes rolling in heads, so it's time to explain what a public-private key pair is.
Break it down. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, so public-private key pair. Mathematically, you have two keys.
You already lost
You've already lost us. What's a key?
Math. I heard there'd be no math.
What's a key?
Let me give it a try.
All right.
So if we use a shared password, that means we both need to know the password. It means we have to communicate ahead of time. But what if I could give you a value that I put on the internet, and I don't ever have to talk to you? You could download it, and anybody could download it, but you could communicate to me in a way that only I could understand what you're saying. The public-private key allows for that kind of interaction.
So the public key is, you could think of it as a bunch of characters, a bunch of gobbledygook, right?
Yep.
But they call it a key because you can use it to encrypt other messages.
And it can only be read by the person with the private key.
Right. But so anybody can use the public key to encrypt a message. So I have a message. Hi, Patrick. This is Carl. And there's a well-known public string of gobbledygook characters out there called a key.
That can be used in a one-way fashion so that Dwayne, even though he knows the key, he knows the public key, he can't get the message from it.
Right. You can't decrypt with a public key. You have to decrypt with a private key that only Patrick has.
Right. And so that public-private key is an excellent way, like SSL. If you've ever heard of HTTPS or SSL, those are when you see the padlock on the website, that means that it's using encryption for the requests. What happens is your browser finds the public key for that website, encrypts your request, and sends it to the server so only it can read the data.
Yeah. And it goes backwards the other way too, right?
If you have a public-private key.
Yeah. So whatever's on your screen, your browser is the only one that can look at it. So
if you had a private key.
Yeah. So how I know about how SSL works because I've actually programmed it before. And how it works is that would you call RSA is sort of the classic key, the standard for private key, public key pairs.
Yeah.
So I create a unique key, and by unique I mean I just generate it with my computer and my browser. Right?
Yeah, you take two massively large prime numbers and multiply them together.
Exactly.
All right.
So
no math.
So I get this big string of gobbledygook that I just created, and I encrypt that with your public key, Patrick. Mm-hmm. And then I send that encrypted key to you, and you decrypt it. So now we both have the same symmetric key that we can both use for encryption and decryption.
Right. Yeah.
That's how SSL works.
What Dwayne has discovered, and I didn't realize it until he dug really deep into it a while back, is that you really can't encrypt a lot of stuff with a public-private key.
No. You don't want to.
It's very onerous to do encryption. So basically, what you just described is if I have a public-private key and you want to talk to me, you'll encrypt the key you want us to use for symmetric key encryption.
Right.
And then we'll talk over that encryption.
Yeah. Good.
Cool.
So coming back to this is an IoT devices. This is an IoT device.
We're unwinding the stack.
All right. So getting back to the IoT device.
So this is an IoT device that has, if you were to take the operating system that's literally sitting on the integrated circuit, right, the firmware of the device, you could find those keys. You could pull them apart.
Now,
and then
that is not a trivial effort. So what measures did you have to take? What lengths did you have to go to? Did the device survive the inspection?
So some of them don't. Honestly, so with this Calais exploit for 83 million IoT devices, that was actually an exploit in the framework of communication they use. So that didn't necessarily have to pull apart the firmware, although the firmware might have pointed to the exploit that could be used, but you didn't have to rip apart a device, just the protocol they were communicating on.
All right. So shall we move on to the phishing campaign?
Absolutely. I like fishing.
I like fishing. My baby likes fishing. Mama likes fishing.
I don't think I've ever heard that song.
I like fishing. Mom likes fishing. My baby likes fishing too. Okay.
And on that note,
all right, tell us what happened.
If you've stayed through that little ditty, we'll talk about.
Yeah, fishing. We shook off a lot of the audience with that.
Yep, there they go.
Right. So this one was interesting. This one we'll with each of these we'll have definitely links to the articles, but this one involved UPS. So there'll be a little bit of unpacking here, but we've all received those emails, right? Yeah. From the quote unquote UPS automated system saying, hey, we couldn't deliver your package, and then there's some weird zip file that you have to download and then extract with a password, and then there's an executable you need to run. Right?
Don't do it.
And most human beings go, nice try, but not today. I'm not going to do that. Right. This was a particularly interesting phishing campaign, because what it did is it sent you to the real UPS website. So when you looked at the email, the URL that they said, hey, here's your package, and you're gonna click on it to see the tracking. The URL literally sent you to UPS's website.
Oh man.
But the interesting part is UPS's website had a cross-site scripting exploit, or XSS exploit.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Which we will. We'll unpack that. And what that means is when you clicked on that link, you literally went to UPS's website. And from UPS's website, it looked like UPS gave you a document from their website. And it downloaded automatically from your browser.
Wow.
And then if you double clicked on it, it ran ransomware. So very interesting, very well done. Claps all around. Yes,
let's give
quality
them a big
work,
hand, shall we?
And a firing squad.
So they were fake and malicious invoice Word documents, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're taking advantage of a vulnerability. Here's the horrible thing about these kinds of vulnerabilities. It's a vulnerability in UPS's website that doesn't affect them, but it allows third parties to take advantage of their visitors.
Wow.
Yeah. So cross-site scripting is where you can take code, browser level code, JavaScript, and you can inject it into another sort of domain's page. So I can take, for example, in this particular case, I can take UPS's website, and then I can have a piece of code that I write run on the browser while you're looking at that site. Now, I'm not affecting UPS at all. I'm not going to UPS and putting the code on the page there.
Yeah.
In this particular case, what I'm doing is in the URL, so the address that you clicked on to go see your tracking info.
Yeah.
All the way at the end was a tiny little piece of code.
Yeah.
That when you clicked on that link, that little piece of code went all the way up to the server and then came back down to your browser, and your browser just ran that code.
Ouch.
Cleverly done, very hard to find.
I got a phishing attempt within 2 minutes of each other. I got the same kind of phishing attempt from 2 different email addresses. And Amazon will never send you an email from anyone except Amazon.com. So that was the first thing that I picked up on. It was some Gmail address, and it was thanks for your order. It said, hello, your Amazon payment of USD $5,167.81 has been charged and invoice has been generated. May take a few moments for this transaction to appear in your account. It's a Sony Bravia HT8 7VR 43-inch smart LED Ultra. 5,000 plus, plus whatever. Charge will appear on your credit card statement as Amazon credit. Shipped to some place in Rochester, New York. And, if you have issues with this transaction, for assistance, call 1-844-281-3650. And, of course, please do not reply to this email. The mailbox is not monitored. So they want you to call. And when they call, they're going to talk you into
telling them the card number.
Well, this must be a mistake. What's your credit card number again? Let me get that.
Right. Let me just refund that.
I need you to identify yourself to us to make sure you're who you are.
But then literally 5 minutes later, I got another email from a different Gmail address. Your order has been shipped. A different email address. And it was also BCC'd to me, but they're sending it to another person, right? Thank you for your recent purchase with Lamfeard LLC by Amazon. And this one is for a Sony Bravia, blah, blah, blah. But the amount is only $1,893.41.
I'd keep that one. It's cheaper.
Yeah, it is cheaper. Yeah.
Things are getting far more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Here's where the world stands right now. We have an email that we send out to people sometimes. Let's say we had an online portal or something like that. We wanted somebody to join. Don't send them a link. Send them a name of a site that's easy to type.
Right.
So like, securityportal.com/reg, and tell them to open a browser and type it in, or tell them to go to a search engine and search for the 4 keywords that'll get them there.
Right.
And then put in the code. Because if you give them the link, I know it's not a dangerous link, but how do they know? You're training them to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I think I told you the Amex story, didn't I? About the fact that I got a phone call, a voicemail that said Amex thought there was some security thing and they gave me a phone number to call. Did I tell you that story?
Yes, you did.
They should never have told me to call a phone number other than the one on the back of my card.
Right.
But they told me to, and then I called the number on the back of my card, got to security, and they're like, oh yeah, that's us. And I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
You're supposed to be the security group. Don't train the users to do the wrong thing.
Right.
Train them to do the right thing. I never click the link. I always, if something like from Amazon or UPS or any of those, I open the site up myself. And when I try to find out whether it's legit by going through the site, not by going through any link provided.
Well, and it's interesting you say because things are getting more complex, but in some ways, it's all manipulating the human beings behind the keyboard.
It is.
Yeah.
Because of how they've been trained.
Yes. Yeah. So, sending them an email like this, they're trained to click on it. Seeing something that looks legitimate from Amazon, they might click on. Asking them to install ransomware because they hate their company. It's all manipulation of the humans in the back.
Even the way I mitigate it, I could still get owned if somebody did DNS poisoning. But that's a higher level of hack.
Yeah, absolutely.
DNS poisoning, because Carl's taught me right, is when you manage to corrupt the database, the domain naming service database that a person is using or the server they're using, so that they get false information, so that when they go to google.com, they don't actually go to the real Google, they go to a fake one that can then direct them to a fake site. In other ways, it basically allows you to let somebody think they're going to a real site when they're really going to a bad one.
All right. We got to talk about this iPhone thing because it's very scary, because in the name of the exploit are the words 0 click.
Yeah.
So that tells me that you can get exploited even if you don't touch anything. All right.
Yeah.
What? And by the way, what is NSO anyway? It's new 0 click iPhone exploit used to deploy NSO spyware. What's the NSO?
So the NSO is a group that their tools have been leaked, if you will. And there's all sorts of information around iPhone exploits. And we talked about them, I think, in episode 3, maybe, was it, Patrick?
Yeah, let's just recap. Are they a good group or a bad group?
Hey, that depends on where you stand. I mean, a lot of people.
Okay. Are they working
who
for
you
us?
work for?
I guess, are they working for the U.S.?
That's even a hard question.
I don't know if that's true. Yeah, when Equation Group got hacked, it was pretty clear they were an American associated organization. Then when Fancy Bear is identified, they're definitely Russian. There's different ones that I don't know if NSO is attributed. They might be.
So they have this Pegasus spyware, right?
Yeah.
And is this what you're talking about when you say their stuff got leaked?
Oh,
yes.
Oh, NSO.
Yes.
NSO is actually Israeli now that I think about it.
I was going to say these are exactly.
Okay.
So this group, we had talked about them a while back, but they create offensive spyware, if you will.
Used by dictators quite often.
Okay. This isn't the NSA.
No.
Because the NSA is the government agency that supposedly was spying on, reading phone numbers and messages and stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. Which, I don't know, maybe they were using these tools. Who knows?
Okay. Anyway, continue.
The Israeli spyware company NSO Group.
Okay.
So it is an Israeli company that has these tools.
Okay.
I'm not sure who their customers are. Maybe it's government, maybe it's not,
right,
etc. But what's interesting about this particular announcement this week is the zero click. And the reason we bring this up is zero click things are kind of freaky.
Yeah.
So when you see the news of, listen, these people were hacked with zero click, what that means is literally in this particular case, an iMessage could be sent to the phone, and without any user interaction at all, you could install a piece of spyware on their phone.
Oh my
God.
God.
That personally freaks me out.
So wait a minute. Was something already there on the iPhone to allow that to happen, or will this work to any iPhone? Is it like a poison message?
So my understanding of this is that it would work on any iPhone. And what's interesting is in iOS 14, there was a new gatekeeper, if you will, who's supposed to be parsing and managing all iMessages in the iOS, called Blast Door.
Okay.
And this particular new exploit bypasses that sandbox. So it sounds pretty scary.
Well, here's something to know. According to what I found online, the Pegasus software is classified as a weapon by Israel, and any export of the technology must be approved by the government.
Okay.
All right. Well, there you go.
And when the exploit came out, when like 1,400 journalists were targeted, the company specifically said that the governments that it sold the software to were likely to blame. So I think they pointed the finger at
the people using the tools,
yeah,
not the group themselves.
Tools
just because they create fantastic tools.
It's also been implicated, or at least some claim that it was part of the tool set used by the Saudis to get Jamal Khashoggi when they killed him.
Oh.
So it's been around.
And it's pretty serious.
Yeah.
So has Apple patched the iPhone so that it's not susceptible to this kind of thing?
So I believe there's a patch out. This came out this week. I haven't dug into what the patch levels are yet, but I do know as of iOS 14.4 and 14.6, I think, were still exploitable.
Wow.
So if you open up your iPhone, iPad, whatever. Now, that's the scary part. Do you know what the not scary part is?
No.
This isn't widely, like Patrick had just said, that the tools are kept very close. So they're sold and authorized to who they sell to. Does that mean that they all could leak out onto the internet? Yeah, they could, but chances are they aren't. So honestly, I would expect you'll probably see Apple patch this before, some bad actor steals this tool and tries to mass deploy it.
Right. You mean some rogue bad actor, because bad actors likely have this tool.
But it's interesting because this is another thing where people talk about, you get freaked out about this zero click ability to spy on your phone, and really the targets that have been found are are either political, most of them political targets. It's always, I'm not expecting to get a message on my phone that tries to bring in a my phone, because
you
nobody
should
cares.
always attribute godlike capabilities to nation states when it comes to cyber, because that's the most likely. 0 days are in their arsenal.
Yeah,
right.
A 0 day in the arsenal of a criminal syndicate makes them millions, and that's what they use it for. In the hands of a government, it basically is a weapon that they store away until it's used.
To distill this down, right? I think the thing is, there shouldn't be pandemonium. Like, you shouldn't freak out about this. Like I said, these are very highly targeted nation state tools towards highly targeted people.
What do they say in Men in Black? There's always a Corellian cruiser and a death ray.
Exactly.
Or a plague.
Yes, about to destroy the planet.
Yeah. And that's
this.
The way cyber. That's the world we live in.
This is our Men in Black.
That's right.
This is the death ray right here. Don't worry about it, people. We'll
There'll be
neuralize
another one
you
next week.
Yeah.
So, speaking of millions of dollars, Patrick, your state has some news, huh?
Yeah, New Hampshire usually keeps a low profile. We don't have many forest fires or other interesting news. But we did have a social engineering hack that netted $2.3 million from, state government. Was it state government?
It was a
town,
government? Actually.
Yeah,
it was
Peterborough.
Peterborough.
A small town, actually.
Beautiful town.
But
yes.
With much less money than they used to have.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And it looks like, from what I've read, it wasn't discovered until the second payment didn't show up. So it was two payments of $1.1 million that went out the door, or 1.2 that ended up being a 2.3 total.
Yikes.
Yeah, and you see these things in the news too, right? And Patrick and I, working with customers, have seen this over and over and over again, where someone will come to us and say, "Oh my gosh, I just paid somebody, I don't know who, $50,000. Can you help?" I'm like, "Okay, what happened? What was the highly technical thing that happened that we can help with?" And they said, they sent us an email, it looked legit, and told us we needed to change the bank account we paid. So we changed it to a different bank account and we paid it.
This was happening to people on their house deposits, that they would get an email from their realtor telling them that when they put down their deposit, the banking information changed for the title company, sent it to this address. And people sent $40,000 on a down payment on a house, and it just disappears.
So they're talking about BEC scammers. What does that stand for?
Business email compromise.
All right. Otherwise known as phishing.
Yes. It's a fancy phishing term.
If someone ever tells you their banking information changed, or that you need to send money that you regularly send to a different place, or that they need something with money, don't do it until you call them and talk to them.
Just be Nancy Reagan. Just say no.
Of
Just
course.
say no.
Yeah.
Because it happens way more often than you think.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I hate to say it, but here again we come back to the human element, right? This is manipulating people to do things, not systems. It's not like, hey, I broke into the back end Swift system on this bank account so that I could transfer money. Like, no, you didn't do any of that stuff. You just asked somebody to pay you, and they did.
I got Roger in accounting to change the bank number, and now we got $2.3 million.
Right, exactly.
And where's my cut?
Now, sometimes the way they figure this out is they hook you with a phishing.
Yeah.
And they get access to your mailbox so they can watch your mail and see who you're about to pay and who you owe money to. And then they check out that company and they say, "Hey, this is Patrick from ABC Corp. That $20,572 payment. Could you send it to this other account? Because we're having problems and we're going to be switching over to this new platform."
Well, and
that sounds legit. They said the right number. It's from the right person. The tenor.
Right. And the other problem, I think, is you run into state and local government where a lot of this detail, you don't even need to hack into the inbox of some person. Most of it's public information as to what the money is being spent on.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not hard for you to go, okay, cool. They're paying this bridge company over here to build a bridge.
Let's see what their emails
And we
look
know
like.
when the project's going to start, and we know what taxpayer money they're going to spend on it.
Yeah.
So let's just see if we can intercept the funds.
And I'll send an email to the person in the accounts payable to ask them if they're hiring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they'll tell me no, and I'll see, what their signature looks like, what their mail server looks like. Who knows whether that email came from the, so that's the other thing is it's also possible the company that was going to get the money. So I know the company that's involved in this, in investigating it, but I haven't talked to anybody about it. So I don't know whether the breach was the email was just a phishing email that was sent and they believed it, or whether the person who was about to get paid or the company who was going to get paid, their email system was breached and the email was a legit email from them, but just not sent by them. Sometimes that's the case.
In this particular case, town officials discovered the attack on July 26th when the Conval School District notified them that they didn't receive their $1.2 million monthly transfer. So it sounds like they had been paying them for a while at this other bank account.
Right, but the question is, did a hacker send them an email from a domain that looked like that domain? Or did they spoof the domain? Or did the hacker get into someone at accounts receivable at the target and send the email from the actual person's mailbox?
Right. But no matter which way it was done,
it worked.
It worked. Well, it worked. But the only difference between those options you just gave are how legitimate it looked.
Right.
That's it. It's like, did it look really legitimate? And it's kind of like, okay, it makes sense. Or was it mostly legitimate? Or did it look like a ransom note written in crayon and card cut out from magazines asking for money? And you then said, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Which, you'd like to think it's not the latter. It's more the former, the highly sophisticated bounce of an email off the real, receiver of the money, and it all looked legit. But
wow.
Well, that's where we're going. It's going to be really looking legit, and people have to start getting a little bit more paranoid. It's going to cost them time and convenience, but that's where we have to get to is, as Mulder said, trust no one.
Yep.
You're going down the zero trust route. I like it.
That's where we have to be.
I guess that's where we're going to leave it.
I think so.
All right. You can get into Patrick's house, but you just can't get out.
That's right. Good luck.
Good luck. Hey, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Carl.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye, Dwayne.
Bye.
Bye, guys.